There's a lot of weird shit going on, I tell you. It's a critical time for our global society and for values-led business. My country is in the last gasps of empire. We're terrorizing the world, militarily and economically, trampling laws, norms, and common decency. My country is led by Donald Trump, a man who displays a callous disregard for regular, everyday people, and especially those who are suffering. A man who sees the world only as money to be made, power to be accumulated, countries to be invaded, oil to be seized. It's the way of the strong man, the big bully, big money, big power and control. It's the idea that economic and military might does not have to obey the law or follow the rules. A me-first belief that empathy is a character flaw. The business community is one of the few entities that have the standing to stop this assault on our humanity. But mainstream business has rolled over, kissed butt, and become enablers. It's a policy of appeasement, and we know where that leads. Mainstream businesses, precisely because they are values-less, because they have no purpose other than maximizing short-term profits, are now engaged in a competition for who can be the biggest sycophant. The world is longing for B Corps and other socially conscious business people to stand up and speak out, which is exactly what Ben & Jerry's would be doing were it not being illegally muzzled by its new owner, the Magnum Corporation. That same mentality, that strong man, big money, big power, doesn't have to follow the laws or the rules or common decency. That heart and soul-based justice for people who are oppressed is a defect, is also at work in the conflict between Magnum Corporation and Ben & Jerry's. So it's fitting to be having this conversation here in Utrecht, because Utrecht sits at the heart of a country with a long tradition of people refusing to quietly accept unjust decisions made by distant power. Centuries ago, the provinces of the Netherlands signed the Union of Utrecht, declaring that rulers who failed their responsibilities to the people must be challenged. It was the beginning of a revolution that created a nation. Many years later, it was Dutch citizens who again stood up and organized the February strike, the only mass protest in Nazi-occupied Europe. Those people knew something important. When power crosses a line, neutrality is not an option. Neutrality is surrender. And that history matters today, because just 40 minutes from here, in Amsterdam, a corporate decision is threatening the company that Jerry and I founded. You know, Jerry and I met in junior high school gym class. We were the two slowest, fattest kids in the class. And we went through junior high and high school together, then went to college. Jerry went through 4 years straight in pre-med. I dropped out of a bunch of colleges. Jerry couldn't get into medical school. I was trying to become a potter, but nobody would buy my pottery. We were two failures, and we got together and we said, well, maybe we'll try to start a business. And since the only thing we really liked doing was eating, we felt it should be a food business. We didn't know anything about business. We had one friend who did know something about business, and he said, whatever you do, don't start a restaurant, not a full-service restaurant, because you got all the food waste, you got all the employees, you got all the hours, etc. He said, if it's got to be food, do something that is a very, very limited menu. So our idea was that we wanted to live in a rural college town, and so we would take a food trend that was starting off in the big cities and bring it to a rural college town. And the two things that were happening were bagels and homemade ice cream. So first we wanted to do bagels, and then we found out bagel equipment was more expensive than we could afford, so we figured ice cream had to be cheaper and decided on ice cream, but we didn't know how to make ice cream, so we took a correspondence course in how to make ice cream. I mean, this was back in the day when you actually mailed stuff back and forth to your instructor. Jerry became the guy who understood the formulas because he was in pre-med, and he started making samples and he'd give them to me, and I'd say, tastes good, but I can't tell what flavor it is. So he added more flavoring, gave it to me. I said, still can't tell, and added more flavoring, and finally I could figure out what it was, and that's why the ice cream is so highly flavored. It turns out I have virtually no sense of taste, because I don't really have a sense of smell, and they're very related. So, for me, I have a very highly developed sense of mouth feel. When you have one sense that doesn't work, the other ones compensate. So, yeah, I can't really taste, but for me, food is all texture. And so the ice cream, what I like, is something that has a big textural contrast. So we have the smooth, creamy ice cream with the big crunchy chunks, highly flavored, and that's how it came about. So we opened in 1978 in an old gas station. Look, there's a picture of an old gas station. Oh, there it is! In the old gas station, on $4,000 a piece. We had no plans to be anything else than that one little gas station, homemade ice cream shop. And what we said to each other is that we want a community-based business, a business that's run the way regular everyday people on the street would like to see a business run. A business that cared about people and wasn't about being exploitive. The business was an artistic success. People loved the ice cream. We sold way more than we expected to. We had a lot of community celebrations. We created community fairs and festivals. We supported the gay and lesbian community. But we weren't making any money. And so we figured, we broke even the first year. We figured, well, all we need to do is sell a little more ice cream and we'll make money the next year. The next year we sold twice as much ice cream and we still broke even. And it turned out that what was happening is we were over scooping. Our scoops were too large. In most food businesses, things are portioned behind the walls back there in the kitchen, but for ice cream, you're portioning right there in front of the customer, and you get a lot of positive reinforcement for a big scoop, and Jerry and I just couldn't resist. We had some restaurants that were asking for our ice cream, and we figured, well, if we can start selling wholesale tubs to the restaurants, then they could deal with the portion control and we wouldn't have to. So we got into a small wholesale business, and I was delivering ice cream in the back of my Volkswagen station wagon in a insulated box that holds 16 tubs, and driving around as fast as I could before the ice cream melted, and that actually worked pretty well until we were selling more ice cream than would fit in the back of that insulated box, and then we bought a real ice cream truck that had mechanical refrigeration, but we could only afford a really old one, so it kept on breaking down, and the repair bills were more than we were taking in ice cream, but luckily we had hired a manager to run the gas station, and he figured out how to make money at it, so he was making money that we were then losing on the wholesale operation. And eventually we decided, I'm passing all these small mom and pop grocery stores on the way to these few restaurants that were running the ice cream. Maybe we could pack it in pints and sell it to those grocery stores, and that's what turned the corner for the business. And we started selling to most every store in Vermont, and then we sold to distributors in the neighboring states. The business was growing quite a bit, and we were spending most of our money paying back our bank loans, and we felt like we were not ice cream men anymore. We had become businessmen. We were dealing with accountants and lawyers and writing memos and hiring and firing, and we were saying, this wasn't exactly what our idea was. And we felt like we were becoming just another cog in the economic machine that tends to exploit the environment, exploit the community, exploit its employees, and our first reaction was to sell the business. So I ran into this restaurateur who was saying, "Ben, how could you possibly do that?" I mean, he was an old guy with a twinkle in his eye. He was like lean. And, the business is your baby. It has so much potential ahead of it. You should keep it. And if there's something you don't like about business, why don't you just change it? Which had not occurred to me before. So we decided to keep the business and see if it was possible to run a business in a way that actually supports the community, supports its employees, and does not despoil the environment. And that's when we came up with our three-part mission statement that includes a social mission. So Ben & Jerry's was built on the idea that business should serve society, not the other way around. Essentially, it was based on this idea from Cornel West that justice is what love looks like in public. And at some point we needed more cash, and we felt like this was an opportunity to make the community the owners of the business. We wanted to sell ownership in Ben & Jerry's to our neighbors. And there were various laws that prevented us from doing that, but so Vermont's a small state. I went to visit with the Commissioner of Banking and Insurance, and he said, well, it's never been done before, but there is this little fine print in the law that would allow you to register as stockbrokers and sell shares in your company to Vermonters as long as you don't go over state lines. So, the accountants and lawyers told us, don't do that. That's a bad thing. Nobody's ever done it before. It's never going to work. And so we did it. And by the end of the offering, we sold it out, and 1 out of every 100 Vermont families became a shareholder in Ben & Jerry's, and they essentially got in on the ground floor for a very low minimum investment of $126, so that people from all economic classes would be able to participate in this. And a few years later, we held a national public stock offering. Things were going very, very well until we hired the wrong CEO and saw a way for him to make a whole bunch of money by selling the company. And he made an inquiry and an offer to Unilever, and it was a publicly held company, and Jerry and I were very opposed to the sale because we wanted to keep the social mission alive. And we were concerned that if it got bought by a company that didn't share that same social mission, the social mission would die. But SEC regulations forced us to sell, and But we were against it. Unilever really wanted it. So in terms of the negotiations, it became clear that the social mission was the issue. And so we spent a lot of time trying to write the social mission into the... Look, is that a sign that I should wrap it up? I'm only just beginning, William. You want me to wrap it up, or you want me to do what he says? They're not going to say. All right, well, anyhow, he was the guy who said, you should tell the story, Anyhow, so, where was I? Yeah, all these plans, you make all the plans, and they get all tossed aside anyhow. It doesn't help to make plans, Lane. You know that. He's an idiot. I'm an idiot. So, where was I here? Oh, right. So we tried to write the social mission in, and, we realized that you couldn't do it because the social mission had to respond to current situations. It needed to evolve with the times. And the way we found to maintain the social mission was to establish an independent board of directors for Ben & Jerry's that had legal responsibility for the social mission and the quality of the ice cream and the use of the trademark, and Unilever had legal responsibility for operations and finance. And that actually worked pretty dang well for about 20 years, and it, that contract also formalized the giving of 7.5% equivalent of our pre-tax profits to an independent foundation that then engaged in, kind of grassroots activist philanthropy. And, you've seen what happened. Ben & Jerry's became one of the most iconic, purpose-driven brands in the world, amazingly enough. So I just want to give you an example of some of the actions that the values led us to take. That's not that. There it is. As the years went on, we called out politicians by name when they were doing things that violated the values of Ben & Jerry's, starting with this full-page ad in the New York Times in 1991, when the New York Times still was a big thing, calling on the president not to go to war. And then I was really, really proud when, after the murder of George Floyd, Ben & Jerry's, without any involvement from Jerry and myself, came out with this statement. And it was the most powerful statement of any company that was made after the murder of George Floyd. And it proved to Jerry and myself that the values had become imbued in the business. But now, Ben & Jerry's, one of the forerunners of the B Corp movement, is under attack. Those legally binding agreements are being violated. Recently, Unilever spun off its entire ice cream division, 100 brands around the world, into a new publicly listed corporation called the Magnum Ice Cream Company, which wasted no time in neutering the social mission and dismantling the independent board of directors. First, I got rid of our 30-year veteran employee CEO, who worked his way all the way up from tour guide, because he continued to respect the legal authority of the independent board. And here's what they did with the independent board members. What? Can you make this work?
Here's the latest in the struggle to save the heart and soul of Ben & Jerry's. The Ben & Jerry's board of directors, this is them right here, have been the guardians of the progressive values and activist social mission of B&J's since 2001. It has the legal authority to do so. And it is deliberately composed of a supermajority of independent directors that represent the interests of Ben & Jerry's, not Magnum. But now, Magnum is trying to remove all of the independent Ben & Jerry's directors. Here's what they're trying to do. Here's Anurata Mittal. She's the chairman of the Ben & Jerry's board of directors and the executive director of the Open Institute. She served Ben & Jerry's for 18 years. Here's Jennifer Henderson, community development consultant, been on the Ben & Jerry's board for 25 years. Here's Shivi Sok, executive director of Tikva Grassroots Empowerment Fund, on the board for 12 years. Darren Dodson, founder and managing director of Aluminum Capital, on the board for 10 years. Tatavio Samuel, CEO of Revolt, America's fastest growing black-owned media company, 5 years. And our newest member, Dr. Asil Najib, professor of history at Dartmouth, 2 years. So all that would be left is Yochanan and Mikhail, the two Magnum representatives. The reality is that if enough people make their voice heard and let Magnum know that what's going on stinks, Magnum will understand that it's in their self-interest to sell Ben & Jerry's to a group of socially aligned investors who actually support the values and social mission of Ben & Jerry's. Because Magnum Corporation owns a whole bunch of brands, and they want people to like them. There's already been so many posts that have tagged at Magnum that they've shut off being able to accept tags. So nice work, but now you gotta go to their social media accounts and tell them you want them to free Ben & Jerry's. And keep Ben & Jerry's, Ben & Jerry's. Let Magnum be Magnum.
So, in the course of it, statements calling for a ceasefire in Gaza were forbidden, supporting student protesters, forbidden, supporting Black History Month, forbidden, criticizing Trump for his stance on abortion and minimum wage, forbidden. I could go on. And to top it off, they stopped funding the Ben & Jerry's Foundation. Ben & Jerry's was built on being an activist company. It's been incredibly successful financially under the existing structure. Yet Magnum insists on trying to change it because they don't like owning a company that takes stands that not everybody agrees with. Either that or they've been Trumpified, or both. Let's be honest, this is not about governance technicalities. This is about silencing a mission-driven brand. People are pretty upset. The independent directors are suing, the foundation is suing, one co-founder has resigned in protest, the other one is standing here right before you today, and participating in this campaign here. Yeah, Yo Magnum. So it's clear to me that it doesn't make sense to be in a relationship where one party needs to be forced by court order to be nice to you. So I've been trying for an amicable divorce. But Magnum doesn't want to let Ben & Jerry's go. They want to change Ben & Jerry's and the unique governance structure. They love the money, but not the mission. They want the golden eggs, but not the goose. There are two reasons why I'm putting all the energy I have into freeing Ben & Jerry's. The first is that Ben & Jerry's can continue, so that Ben & Jerry's can continue to be an increasingly powerful force on a whole range of social justice issues on into the future. The second is that Ben & Jerry's is one of the highest profile leaders of the values-led business and B Corp movement. It's now a $1 billion global brand, ripping the heart out of Ben & Jerry's, or worse yet, proclaiming that watered-down actions are bold social justice initiatives is a huge setback for the entire movement. So the solution is simple. Sell Ben & Jerry's to a group of socially conscious investors that actually support the social mission and want it to thrive. Restore its independence. Let the brand operate as the mission-driven company it was designed to be. That's better for the mission, and is better for Magnum shareholders because the value of Ben & Jerry's has always come from one thing, and that's authenticity. So this is a market research about which brands are the most authentic in the world. And as you see, Ben & Jerry's is number 2 beyond the incredible Patagonia. We want to keep it that way because as the authenticity disappears, the brand value disappears with it. And that's something that Magnum Corporation and Magnum shareholders especially should understand. The campaign to free Ben & Jerry's is gathering quite a bit of momentum. It's being covered in a lot of press. Over 100,000 people have sent letters and petitions to Magnum that you might have noticed. I delivered yesterday. Here's more stuff. The B Corp movement, certified by B Lab, is not just a certification. It's a community. So today, I'm asking the B Corp community and allies to take some specific actions. You can probably think up some others. We believe things are going to come to a head in the next few months, so the actions that people take or don't take are critical. So this slide gives you some ideas, and especially it gives you that QR code. And if you click on the QR code or you kind of take a picture of it or whatever, you'll get more information. It'll take you to the Free Ben & Jerry's website. Make a public statement. Let's see. Inform and activate your customers. You know, there's loads of people who really support Ben & Jerry's, but they have no idea what's going on. Help generate some investor pressure. You know, lots of investors own Magnum, but they don't know they own Magnum because they got Magnum stock when it was, because they owned Unilever stock, and they ended up getting a share in Magnum for every 5 Unilever stocks that they owned. But, I don't know. I got to finish up because I'm way over time. But I want you to know that the reality is that I can't free Ben & Jerry's on my own. All I can do is let people know what's going on. If people sympathize but they don't act, Ben & Jerry's is going to turn into just another piece of frozen mush that you find on the grocery freezer. But if enough people stand up and make their voice heard, we will free Ben & Jerry's.